The storm had ended hours ago, but the world was still screaming. Through the blizzard haze, a widowed alien mother clawed at the ruins of her home, bare hands bleeding, refusing to stop. From the cliff above, a lone human engineer watched her, his helmet cracked, orders buzzing in his ear. "Leave the zone," Calder. "It's condemned." He looked down at the woman, at the child shivering beside her, then unhooked his tether. "Not anymore," he said, and jumped. The snow hit sideways, biting through Reese Calder's cracked visor as he trudged down the collapsed ridge. Every step sent a hollow vibration through the steel remains of the colony, as if the world still hadn't decided whether it was alive or dead. His boots sank ankle-deep into ice, crunching over shattered solar tiles and bent alloy ribs. Ahead, the alien woman worked like she didn't feel the cold. She wasn't using tools, just her hands, hauling slabs of metal aside to clear a space barely large enough for a child's body. Her violet skin shimmered faintly under the gray light, marked with cuts that refused to close. The little one beside her, no older than 5, sat wrapped in a ragged thermal sheet, face pale blue, unmoving. Reese crouched beside a fallen beam and spoke through his helmet mic, tone careful, human. "Ma'am, this platform's unstable. You stay here, you'll both end up in the sea." The woman didn't look up. "Then I'll hold it together myself." Her voice was rough, the kind that carried more loss than anger. Reese had heard that tone before, on rescue calls that came too late. He knelt slowly, palms open, no threat. "I'm not here to take you anywhere, just trying to keep the cliff from burying you alive." A sharp gust tore through, slapping his coat against his body. His comm crackled again. "Commander Calder, status check. You've deviated from your assigned route." He muted it without hesitation. The woman finally met his eyes, her irises faintly glowing, pupils vertical like a cat's. "You people built this place," she said. "You promised it was safe." Reese's chest tightened. "Yeah," he muttered. "We say that a lot." He moved closer to the child, checking her pulse, weak but steady. He unclipped a small heater pod from his belt and set it beside her. A soft hum rose as warmth spread. The girl flinched, then leaned toward the heat instinctively. For a moment, Elira just stared at him, expression unreadable. Then quietly, "You shouldn't help us. They'll punish you." Reese smiled, weary but honest. "They already did. I'm just finishing the job." He stood looking at the half-collapsed shelter behind her. "Let's rebuild this the right way." The wind howled again, scattering flakes across the ruins. But for the first time since the storm, someone was working with her, not watching from above. By evening, the wind had eased, leaving the cliffs wrapped in a brittle calm. The sky glowed a dull violet, fractured by slow-moving clouds that still smelled faintly of ozone. Reese and Elira worked side by side without much conversation, lifting what panels could still be saved. Every sound carried, the clang of metal, the soft scrape of boots against frozen stone, the uneven rhythm of two people who didn't yet know how to move together. When the first wall finally stood upright, Reese exhaled through his teeth and leaned on his tool case. "Not bad," he said. "Still standing." "We might just make a tradition out of that." Elira wiped frost from her brow with the back of her wrist. "Humans always celebrate too soon." He grinned. "Occupational hazard." The silence that followed wasn't hostile anymore. It was the quiet that came when exhaustion did the talking. The small heater pod glowed between them, throwing a circle of orange light that almost looked like safety. Saren, the little one, sat close to it, tracing lines in the frost again, murmuring to herself in words Reese didn't understand. He found himself watching the child more than the structure. "She should sleep soon," he said softly. Elira's tone hardened again. "She'll sleep when the roof stops falling." That landed heavier than he expected. He nodded once and got back to work. The beam he set next creaked but held. "All right," he said. "Roof staying." Permission granted to nap. Something like a smile flickered on her face. Quick, unguarded, gone in a second. They shared the first real food of the day, 2 ration bars and melted snow. Reese offered half of his to the child. Elira tried to refuse, but Saren had already taken it, chewing slowly. "See?" Reese said. "Interspecies diplomacy achieved." That earned him a faint chuckle, barely audible but real. When the heater dimmed, Reese checked its power cell. "One night left," he murmured. Elira looked up. "And after that?" He met her gaze across the flickering light. "After that, I steal another." For the first time, she didn't argue. The wind outside rattled the half-built wall, but inside the thin circle of warmth, it almost felt like a home. Fragile, temporary, but theirs for the night. The next morning arrived gray and thin, the kind of light that made everything look half frozen and half forgotten. Reese woke before either of them, his breath fogging in the cold. The heater's hum had faded to a low whisper. He checked the temperature readout, tapped it twice, and muttered, "Still alive." Miracles happen. Outside, the colony stretched into silence. Broken towers, fractured bridges, entire streets swallowed by ice. The kind of view that made you feel like the last person left who cared. He rubbed the back of his neck and glanced toward Elira. She was already awake, kneeling beside a cracked support beam, tightening the bolts he'd set the night before. Her movements were careful, efficient, practiced. "You start working before sunrise?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Storms don't wait for daylight," he smirked. "Neither do humans with bad sleep schedules." That earned him a small exhale that might have been laughter. Progress. By midday, the shelter had begun to look less like a ruin and more like a home. They added insulation sheets, sealed cracks, reinforced the roof supports. Elira taught him how her people used resin from local vines as bonding material. Flexible, self-heating. "We built with what survived," she said simply. Reese studied the resin as it hardened, giving off a faint violet glow. If the core had half your ingenuity, this colony wouldn't be in pieces. Something in her expression shifted. Pride mixed with old hurt. "The core designed this place," she said. "The storm didn't destroy it. Your greed," he froze mid-motion. "What are you talking about?" She pulled a small metallic shard from the rubble and tossed it toward him. It wasn't debris. It was a fragment of a data core, its edges marked with human serial codes. Reese connected the scanner on his wrist, and the readings made his stomach drop. "Experimental mining field," he whispered. "They said this site was cleared months ago." Elira's voice was steady. "They lied. The surge wasn't nature. It was your test run." The wind outside rose again, sharp and accusing. Reese stared at the blinking shard, feeling the weight of every ruined wall around them. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Just a choice. Pretend he hadn't seen it, or do something that might finish destroying what was left of him. The wind picked up again by evening, scraping across the cliffs like it wanted the world to remember what it had done. Reese packed the fractured data core inside his jacket, its dull light pressing against his ribs. Every step, every sound felt louder than it should have. He knew what that evidence meant. Carelessness, cover-ups, maybe even murder. And he also knew the core never forgave whistleblowers. Inside the shelter, Elira was fixing the heater with a bent tool. Saren curled beside her, drawing circles in the dust. The air smelled faintly of metal and burnt resin. Reese crouched beside them, pretending to check the wall joints. "You're hiding something," Elira said quietly. She didn't look at him. She just knew. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Your storm wasn't an accident. My people triggered it." Her hands froze. The silence stretched until the heater clicked again. "You came here to help us rebuild," she said slowly. "And now you tell me you built the storm?" "Not me," he said, "but the system I worked for." Same difference, right? Her eyes burned brighter under the dim light. "So what now, human? You fix the roof and pretend it never happened?" Reese almost laughed, but it came out tired instead. "No, I make it right." Before she could reply, a distant roar broke the quiet, the deep, rhythmic thrum of engines. A spotlight swept across the cliff, slicing through the gray. Registry inspectors. 2 ships descending fast. Elira's breath caught. "They found us." Reese grabbed his tool belt. "Then we move." He opened the external hatch, icy air slamming into his face. 2 figures were already climbing down the ridge, searchlights dancing over the ruins. "Officer Calder!" one shouted through a loudspeaker. "Stand down and surrender unauthorized assets." Saren whimpered. Elira pulled her close. her body trembling, half from fear, half from fury. Reese turned toward them. You stay behind me, no matter what happens. He stepped into the light, hands raised, voice steady. They're not assets. They're survivors. Not your jurisdiction, the lead inspector barked. Reese reached for the data core, holding it up so its glow cut through the storm haze. Then maybe this is. The inspector hesitated, confusion flickering. The wind howled, shaking the new wall of the shelter. Behind Reese, the child whispered something small but certain. Home. And that single word was enough to make him stop caring what the cost would be next.
The inspectors froze when they saw the data core. Its faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat, reflecting off the ice. For a long moment, no one spoke. The wind did the talking, whispering through torn metal and half-built walls. Reese held the core higher. This is your storm, he said. You detonated a mining test on a live colony. You buried it, and them. The older inspector's jaw tightened. You have no proof that the device in Reese's palm blinked twice and projected a faint hologram, recorded coordinates, test signatures, timestamps. The evidence hung there in the cold air, undeniable. Proof enough? He asked quietly. Elira stepped forward, her child still clinging to her coat. You burned our homes, she said, her voice shaking, and you called it an experiment. The younger inspector lowered his weapon. The older one looked away. We'll report this, he muttered. No, Reese said, his voice flat. You'll transmit it, now. He tossed the core toward them. It landed with a dull clang, still glowing. One of the men hesitated, then did what he was told. The signal flared skyward, a single streak of light vanishing into the clouds. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Reese turned to Elira. They'll come for me next. Her eyes softened. Then don't wait for them. He almost smiled. You sound like my conscience. I sound like someone who's done hiding. They stood there in the fading light, the sea below flickering with distant auroras. The inspectors retreated wordlessly, shadows swallowed by the wind. When they were gone, Reese finally let himself breathe. His body shook, not from fear, but from the exhaustion of someone who had finally stopped running from the truth. Elira touched his sleeve gently. You could leave, she said. No one would blame you. He looked at her, then at the child playing quietly beside the heater. I've been leaving my whole life, he said. Maybe it's time to build something that stays. The storm clouds thinned, revealing a pale band of gold along the horizon. The heater's glow painted their faces in the same warm light that had once seemed impossible. For the first time since the storm, the silence didn't sound empty. It sounded like peace. Reese exhaled, steady and sure. Let's finish the roof, he said. Elira smiled. Together then. And together they did.